This £5 million report funded by the UK government is not so much absolute zero as absolute insanity.
Since 2020, I have personally reduced the emissions from my house in Teddington by 85%.
London Borough of Richmond upon Thames, an affluent area of southwest London with an abundance of parks, the famous river, and way too many coffee shops. But don't be fooled by the smiles on the faces of residents and visitors as they enjoy time with family and friends. Inside, these people are quivering with fear because on 9th of July 2019, Richmond Council declared a
climate emergency.
The Council's 63-page climate emergency strategy states its commitment to being a carbon-neutral organisation by 2030 and a zero-carbon borough by 2050. And in February 2023, the Environment Committee unilaterally set an additional target for the borough to be net zero by 2043. 1 year later, the same committee reviewed progress and approved the action plan for the forthcoming year, kicking off with 4 public speakers.
Almost 50% of Richmond's CO2 emissions come from homes and about another 20% from other buildings. So it's absolutely vital we get homes off gas for heating and cooking, we improve insulation, and we make wider use of solar PV for electricity generation.
I am a resident and a local architect. We design homes for families that want to extend, refurbish and retrofit their properties. We always say to our clients, why not install an air source heat pump now when you do all the work? But then our planning department requests an acoustic report for the air source heat pump. The cost of an acoustic report is £900 to £1,200. The homeowner then has to pay this amount of money before they've even got the security of planning permission. So they're taking a risk. And so what happens, sadly, every time is the air source heat pump gets removed from the planning application, like we all would do, because it's £1,000, and that is a lot of money. So goodbye the air source heat pump.
Since 2004, I've been speaking on the issue of climate change. Since 2020, I have personally reduced the emissions from my house in Teddington by 85%. If we do not achieve net zero, the Earth will continue to warm indefinitely without any limit. Richmond has this goal of achieving net zero by 2043, which is 4,400 working days away. To achieve this goal, every gas boiler in this borough has to be decommissioned. When someone tells you they want to put in a heat pump, there should be a big smiley face on the council website. We're so pleased you want to install a heat pump. This is what we can do to help you.
And then it was my turn.
In July 2019, this committee passed a resolution to support the council's ambition to be carbon neutral by 2030 and zero carbon by 2050. This goal was published in the climate emergency strategy, but I suspect few, if any, people in this room understand the true extent of what a zero carbon policy actually means. In November 2019, the Absolute Zero report was published by a snappily named organisation called UK Fires. To say this report is mind-blowing would be an understatement. If the proposals in this report were to be adopted, it would mean the end of our modern society as we know it. Zero shipping, no imports or exports to or from the UK by sea, no new steel or cement, basically no construction, only retrofit and adaptation of existing buildings. Heating reduced to 60% of today's use. Energy required to transport and cook food reduced to 60% of today's use. 50% reduction in all resources used for manufacturing. Electricity being 100% of energy supply. Where is all this huge increase in electricity supply going to come from? It certainly will not be from renewables. All UK airports to close between 2030 and 2049, with zero flying by 2050. I have a sneaking suspicion that this will not affect the so-called elites in their private jets, and is just meant to be us plebs. This £5 million report funded by the UK government is not so much absolute zero as absolute insanity. It was presented to the House of Lords on 6th of February 2020, where it got a mostly positive reception, with a few exceptions. From that debate, I will quote Labour Life peer Lord Lipsey, who says, "There is a big difference between what we have all accepted now, zero net emissions, and what this report proposes, zero emissions. Not a single particle or atom of carbon is to be reduced by man, and that means no aircraft, no shipping, no cement, and various other extreme things. Other noble lords may find that helpful. I do not find it helpful in selling this prospectus to people in the future. I think it sounds too scary. It is not the case that if we go above zero, that there will be an Armageddon. There is a set of scenarios of possible temperature rises with a set of emissions. It could be worse or better. Scientists do not know precisely. So the idea that we have to get rid of absolutely every particle of emissions is crazy." End quote. Be under no illusion. Net zero is a stepping stone to absolute zero. I hope this has provided some food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for clarification? No. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for...
Heads down.
Thank you.
No
Could somebody
curiosity,
just,
no
oh,
questions.
it's all done.
So now
Thank you
over
very
to
much.
council
So,
staff and councillors.
I'm Dave Sharp, Assistant Director for Property Services. So my team is leading on the decarbonisation of council buildings, retrofitting of council building. I'll be honest, it is a challenge in delivering our programme. We have delivered some decarbonisation projects across the borough. We've got a lot more to do, obviously.
I think one of the obstacles for people is cost of the tariffs. I think the cost of electricity is an obstacle to people moving off of fossil fuels.
So it's very much thinking about different groups of residents, how they engage with the council, how they take information on what's the easiest way to get out of that in order to affect that behaviour change and make that behaviour change easy.
But to a lot of us, there'd be no incentive to do it, even whatever you say, because you don't get the return. And it's how you get us to do things. And I think however you achieve that will be interesting.
It certainly will be interesting.
We've talked about lobbying to get really powerful economic levers from national government on things like this, normalising it in every conversation so people think, well, it's like you know, if your garden gate falls off its hinges, you put it back on. That's what you do. That's normal, responsible living, and it's to normalise it as much as that. But there's a lot of work to do on it, I think. But what are the next steps on the next strategy?
We're looking at a model that's called community reporting, which is where you support individuals in the community to then go off and talk to their communities and the people they know to then feed back to us. So it's not the council going out and doing this and being that council presence. It's people in the community taking that on and gathering that information, holding those conversations in their spaces maybe that we can't necessarily go to as the council, and then to feed that back to us so we can get that information, get that input. It's a much deeper way of engaging. It's a way of getting that sort of community perspective, community involvement in it.
So
Doesn't sound sinister at all, does it?
Are we happy to look at the recommendations now? In section 2, are the recommendations agreed? Thank you very much.